Yo, guys, it's Kyle coming at you from Bane's Film Reviews. Today, I am sitting down with Brendan Schechter, and we are here to talk about the 1986 cult classic, Howard the Duck. It was a fantastic choice by Brendan. It's a film that I haven't seen in a long, long time. So I'm glad that he suggested this one when I met him just a few weeks ago. Shout out to Aiden and Steph for that. Um, but how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I couldn't be better. How you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I forgot, like, I didn't forget, but so my schedule has been extended. I now work till 5 o'clock. So I didn't think about that when I scheduled this for 7. So I've been rushing.
Okay.
Because I was doing these at like 3:15 as soon as I got home from work, and then I got extended. So it is what it is, but I'm here and I got to watch the movie. Yeah, I watched it yesterday morning. So it's semi-fresh in my brain. So I'm just curious your initial thoughts on the film.
Well, I just got done watching it 15 minutes ago,
Okay.
and that was the second time I've seen it. But the first time I saw it, I've heard things from everybody. They would say, "Oh man, this is definitely one of the worst films ever. It's terrible. Everything about it stinks." But I kind of liked it. I won't even lie. It's not a good movie, but it's an enjoyable, fun time. It's just stupid and it's wacky, and that's what I love about it. So,
Yeah. So I agree with you to a degree. So I mean, I went into this remembering it as being this ridiculous thing that, much like this show, has no structure and just was chaotic and
oh yeah.
whatever happened happened. But watching it this time, I found a lot throughout the course of it that was much more interesting than I remembered, much more cinematically appealing than I remembered, um,
Definitely.
and uniquely far more sexual than I remember.
Oh,
Um,
big time.
so I,
Big
I
time.
definitely want to touch on that at some point. Um, but I think my initial takeaway was how sentimental they managed to make this film about a duck with
Okay.
arms. Um, so I mean, they take this duck, and who really gives, a shit about a duck? But they take this duck and they pull him from his own planet and they force him onto Earth. And what better place to be stranded than Earth, in Cleveland of all
In
places?
Cleveland, yeah, even
Yeah,
better.
yeah. So I'm curious your thoughts on how do they manage to make, I mean, how do they manage to make a film about a duck being stranded in Cleveland, sentimental and emotionally relevant?
You know, when I was just watching it, I started what 2 hours ago. It's nearly 2 hours long, the movie.
Mhm.
And the whole entire 2 hours, I kept telling myself, man, like Howard is so relatable. And I think
Yeah,
that has everything to do with it. And it's like, how can everybody says this movie failed in every way, but it somehow succeeded in making my life comparable to a duck's somehow, but not
yeah,
really. If you know what I mean.
yeah.
Like the average person, they can say, "Oh, that's happened to me. Oh, that's happened to me." But I guess that's a big part of it in my eyes. So,
So the moment that got me is when he goes to, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, Lea Thompson's character,
oh,
um,
Beverly.
Beverly, yes. So when he goes back to her apartment and the truck drives by and he begins to have like a panic attack. The
Yeah,
fact that
yeah,
they have this duck have a panic attack and he's experiencing PTSD because of something that traumatic that just happened to him, that was the moment that it hit me, and I was like, oh my god, like this duck is very real. It's
yeah,
obviously a
yeah,
person in a costume, but it's very, very real. And
definitely.
I think doing little things like that you'd never expect from a film of this nature, to be able to do that, um, really bridges the gap between this insane movie and everyone watching. So you get tidbits and little glimpses of that throughout the entire film, and he's homesick, and again he's experiencing PTSD, and he has these sexual feelings, and he has goals and aspirations, and he's I mean, they refer to him in the synopsis of the film as a humanoid duck, and he is
Yeah,
very human in a lot of ways. So that really appealed to me, and his voice doesn't match his body, and so to a degree that's frustrating because I wish they had maybe done a better job of pairing the two, but
Right.
also because his voice is so obviously human, that's sort of another connector.
That's literally what I was about to say because obviously it's not the person who's in the suit who's voicing
Mm,
him, but it still feels very genuine and real when you're watching the movie. Like he's having interactions with people. Like he's from another planet. Like this is all new to him, but he's having
yeah,
interactions with most people like it's a normal like he's just accepted the fact that he's on another planet. You know what I'm so
right.
uh yeah, so
And so one of the things that can frustrate me with films like this, not necessarily Marvel films, but films where they're otherworldly and you have aliens or the like playing a
right,
major role, is when they lose that emotional connection to the viewer because like, oh well, it's a movie and well, it's outer space, so that doesn't need to make sense. But the thing that allows us to connect with it and access it is the human emotion. Without that,
right,
I think the film is complete trash. And I think in a lot of ways that saves it because there's a lot of silly aspects. Like you said, it's a lot of fun, but I don't think that they're able to make that connection with viewers if he doesn't have the same, moral compass and goals and aspirations as the people watching. So it's incredible that they're able to do that. And I mean, a
right.
testament to George Lucas being part of this team that brought him to life. So,
Oh yeah. It's it's interesting just how a film like this could be made. I mean, basically just off the backs of all the original Star Wars movies, and then you know this is what was next, and I think they kind of just shot for it, and it obviously missed at the time,
mhm,
but like I don't know if you saw the new Guardians of the Galaxy
I
movie.
did.
Well, I mean, it's like it's not like Howard the Duck is irrelevant. Like
No.
he's still around, but it's just like they shot too far going in the '80s, going for a full movie about
Yeah.
Howard the Duck. Like having him in a cameo in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, that's fine. But more
Yeah.
than that, I don't know. So
But I think that having him because he's shown up in all three now.
right,
And he made a brief cameo in Endgame.
right,
And I think it's a testament to this film, the fact that
hmm
people are excited to see him even for a split
yeah,
second. I
yeah,
mean, there's no other frame of reference unless you read comic books, which a lot of the people now that are watching these Marvel movies were not comic book people, including me.
right. Me
So for
too.
me, yeah, so for me and you to care in the slightest that he shows up is a testament absolutely to what they were able to create in the 80s.
Right.
So,
Like
yeah.
I saw all the Guardians of the Galaxy. I saw Endgame. I saw all those before I saw Howard the Duck the first time.
Okay.
But I still knew about Howard the Duck just from
Mm,
hearing things about this movie, like the Howard the Duck the movie,
yeah.
all the bad things. But
Yeah.
I don't know. You just can never judge a book by its cover,
No.
really, and you cannot. Obviously, you can't judge a movie without seeing it. I guess the same thing, you
Sure,
know.
sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah,
I mean, here we
exactly.
are 25 or 35 years later uh talking about this horrible movie. So,
Right.
hey, good
Well,
for them.
yeah. I mean, what do you like? What do you think about? What are your genuine emotions about the movie? Because like you said you had some mixed feelings. You
Mm.
said so.
I mean, so I had a conversation a couple months ago with a colleague of mine. He's another guy. He's big into films, and we were talking about movies and them being fun. And like a lot of these blockbuster films are just fun, and that's not enough anymore. At
Right.
least not for me. And I think for cinephiles and those of us that really analyze it, fun's not enough.
Right.
So, that's why movies like the movies that The Rock typically appears in don't appeal to me as much. I think he's a good
Yeah.
actor. He just shoots for the stars and does these insane things.
Right.
But so I think Howard the Duck does a good job of balancing that so it's not just fun. I mean, it's primarily insanity and it's primarily fun. Just the fact that you're seeing a duck walk and talk and try to stop an alien invasion.
Yeah.
Um, but the fact that they're able to incorporate those emotional aspects and it's culturally relevant as well. I
Definitely.
mean, they touch on racism and things like that. I mean, we're less than 2 decades really removed from when segregation was extinct or was supposed to be made extinct.
Right.
Um, so I mean, that's still very much a big topic at the time in 1986, and that's something that Lucas was able to do with the characters like C-3PO and R2-D2 and the droids in general in Star Wars. And like you said, this is riding the coattails of what he was able to accomplish just a couple of years before,
Right.
um, but in an entirely new capacity. So I guess my initial thoughts are that it does a good job of balancing uh, fun and emotion in a way that, while it's still really silly, it's relevant and accessible.
Yeah. Like I definitely wrote something along those lines. Oh, just him being a duck. I feel like like from an emotional standpoint, I think I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but in the beginning of the movie, he when he first comes to Earth, obviously he's having some, crisis about being on a new planet, but slowly but surely he just begins to accept things because he realizes how close it is to his planet. Really, it's just
Mm,
it's ducks instead of humans, obviously.
right,
So I feel like that is another, like, from an emotional aspect, he he's able to channel it in a better way than, say, if he went to like a planet where it's like there's no other beings like them, or if it's only um primitive species or something like that. So
right,
like I guess my point is, see, like, if Howard the Duck went to a different planet, like, we wouldn't be seeing the movie. Like, his planet is the shape of an egg, but it's Earth. Like, I'm not sure what that's supposed to correlate. I haven't read the comics, like I
mm,
said before, so I'm not sure what his whole backstory is. But
right.
I wish we saw some more of that, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure,
I don't, as a non-comic book reader but a fan of Marvel movies, I just haven't. I feel like we don't get enough backstory, and obviously this was the prototype Marvel movie,
yeah,
and it didn't work. But I would still like to know more about, how that comes into play, especially in this older movie.
sure. And I think so. I always compare DC and Marvel. It's like impossible not to. And so my issue with the DC movies is they are, or up to this point at least. Um, I mean, I'm assuming they're going to change drastically with Gunn in charge now. But
Definitely.
what they've always done with this DC extended universe is they haven't developed backstories appropriately for moviegoers. They're for comic book fans, and we're kind of hung out to dry, not knowing the backstory and not being able to connect emotionally to some of these characters. Which Marvel, even though people are aggravated that we get the same backstories over and over again, we get Spider-Man over and over again, and
Right.
we constantly flash back to how Iron Man started. I think it's essential because they're helping to bridge that gap between the people that didn't read the comics and what's happening in front of them. Because without it, those movies don't succeed, and that's, I'm sure, a huge reason why a lot of people were frustrated with Howard the Duck is because, like you said, they didn't create enough backstory to allow you to understand really who he was, other than the glimpse of like the pictures at the very beginning when they're panning through his house.
Yeah.
You don't get much else from his world. I mean, he flies through a couple other apartments, and you see some odd things in the
Oh, yeah,
process.
definitely see some odd things.
um, but yeah, they could have done a little more world building on his end in the first few minutes. I mean, why not extend it to a nice round 2 hours and give us a couple
Yeah,
minutes of
yeah. I
backstory?
mean, it could have been an extra 3 minutes. Do they? I don't even know if they say what his planet's name is. Maybe they do, but I just don't remember.
I can't remember if they do either.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, even if they do say it, and the fact that we can't remember, then maybe we should have touched
exactly.
on that a little bit more.
Right,
Um, I mean, I'm sitting there analyzing, and the fact that I can't remember the name of his planet, if they did in fact say it, that's not a good thing.
right,
So
right.
yeah. But I want to touch again on the cultural relevance. Again, racism wasn't, I mean, racism was still very prominent, but segregation was was still relevant because they hadn't gotten rid of it that long ago, and they're creating a character that's massively different
Yeah.
in terms of looks and appearance to everyone else that he comes in contact with. Um, and there's a couple times when it's really relevant. I mean, when they're in bed together, him and Beverly, and there's that really awkward, sexual encounter where she teases him a little bit, and
Hmm.
then the three gentlemen are looking down over the curtain, and like they're so disgusted by what they're seeing.
Right.
And then when they're in the diner later, the way she gets them to stop is she yells, "That's my boyfriend." The fact that they're
Hmm.
so taken aback by the fact that this could possibly be her boyfriend, when there's very obviously a real connection between the two of them in that
Definitely.
regard. Um, I think they do a good job again of connecting it to our reality in a way that we're able to understand and appreciate it enough that it balances that fun so that that's not, overboard. Do you
Right.
agree with that?
No, I definitely agree. Um, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I agree though, but
Yeah, I mean, it's not aggressive. It's not shoving anything in your face where it's, too far gone and out of place and, fractures the narrative. But
yeah,
it's done in a way where probably a little harder to pick up today
right.
because we're
Because
so far removed.
yeah, because I was going to say I'm having trouble just because I haven't even thought of it like that until you just said it right now.
Mm.
But just thinking about it, it's so obvious in there, and man, you just really just opened my eyes a little bit, So
Well, I don't want to sound like a genius. I was fortunate enough to have seen Hidden Figures just a couple days before, so
okay,
it was fresh in my head,
okay,
those details and those ideas. Um, so it wasn't like I just picked up something that wasn't obvious. I mean, it was there. We watched it in history class. We actually just finished yesterday, so it was right around the
okay.
time I was watching this. So I'm not some genius by any by any means. Um, but then so there's also I keep talking about balance because we talk about fun and insanity and things like that, and they do a good
Yeah,
job of balancing that. And I am curious why I feel like there's the obvious reason that they didn't want it to be too far one way. They didn't want it to be too far, you know, uh, real life based where, oh my God, we're dealing with the real issues of the world and it's just too much to handle and over aggressive. And they obviously didn't want it to be too fun where the mature audiences go, oh, this is trash. I don't ever want to watch this again. But do you personally think there's other reasons why they decided to do this, like how they managed to come up with this balance of, reality and insanity?
well, I think if they went too far one way, it would end up being like maybe something more like American Graffiti, like you know what I mean, like too based in
Mm,
reality. And then if they
yeah.
went too far the other way, it would be too close to Star Wars. So I think they were trying to go for the perfect blend of the two, you
Hmm.
know. And I just don't think it panned out the way they were hoping for. But
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways, with the exception of the sexual innuendos and whatnot.
that was
I
just
mean,
odd. That's the weirdest part about the whole entire
it,
movie. So
yes. And so, I mean, it's still rated PG. It's still
yeah,
very much
it's
a movie
crazy.
that's geared toward children, at least in terms of the rating. So the
Yeah,
fact that they're pushing for a PG rating, you'd imagine that they had the intention of trying to appeal to a younger audience.
right.
Um, so it's interesting that the inclusion of uh of all the sex and whatnot. She can come over and say hi. She doesn't have to try to hide.
She probably will. That's why she keeps walking back there. She's like, "What's going on? I want to be involved. You want to say hi?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Enjoy. I just watched Howard the Duck.
We watched it together.
It's
Well, I want to know what you think now as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Here I am.
This is my fiance Brooke.
Hello, everybody. um, I guess my opinion overall is incredibly wacky, as Brendan said. The first time I watched it, I won't lie, I fell asleep because at the halfway mark, I was like, "Oh my god, like this is a little too much for me." But now watching it the second time, I still think, "Oh my god, that's a lot." But we
Yeah,
were talking one thing in specific. We were talking about the actual effects that they were going for.
yeah.
Like what did we say that thing was?
Like the airplane thing they're in. Uh, I
Oh
don't even
yeah,
know
yeah.
that whole scene, the stunt work and the all that stuff in the movie is pretty impressive. Like if the movie has anything going for it, it's definitely that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And like they land that thing on a truck that's moving and they take off from it and a whole bunch of stuff like that. And it's just pretty impressive, all that stuff. But
It
what else?
is.
I there was what what did Dr. Jennings say? That was really that was a really corny quote that I said reminded me of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He said it when they're all in the diner. He says, "If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen." And it's just like, oh man, that's freaking corny as hell. So
Yes, it is. He's
yeah,
the wackiest character of the entire film.
I was like the two best performances in the movie. I think are Howard because
Uh,
I just love him for some reason, and then Dr. Jennings or the Dark Overlord, whatever you want to call him.
yeah.
Uh, oh my God, Jeffrey Jones is a certified weirdo, but still, uh, good performance on his part.
Oh yeah, for sure. To be able to bring that character to life, that's good acting for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad that we got your input too.
yeah.
Thanks. Nice and wacky. Always good for a wacky. Like do the show. Movie. There we go.
Whatever it is. See ya.
But yeah, and so in terms of the wacky, I mean, you have really wacky characters all the way around. I mean, they're surrounding a talking duck, and he oftentimes, with the exception of Beverly, manages to be the most grounded
Oh yeah,
individual in the movie.
definitely.
And it's another reason why we're able to connect with him. But yeah, Jeffrey Jones is fantastic, but what a wackadoodle of a character.
Oh my God. Well, he he starts out so like I'm like, okay, his character seems like he's gonna be cool, like not like he seems like he's just gonna be a good side character. And then he goes
Right.
the whole Dark Overlord thing happens, and it's like, oh my God, what and just that whole entire diner scene and everything that happens there,
Yeah.
that is hilariously wacky in every way. I mean,
Yes.
I don't even know how it went there, but it did. Like, and the other thing about that is that I love how none of the other characters at first are like questioning what is going on with him. They're just like,
Right.
"Oh, you must have had something bad for lunch," or they say a whole bunch of stuff like that, and it's like, oh, clearly there's a little something more going on with this guy. Like, I don't know what they were
Well,
thinking.
you see the interview with the waitress afterward, and she was like, I thought he had a great Halloween costume. And then I realized Halloween's not for 2 months. Like
Yeah.
these people in this diner are stupid.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they you watch a duck walk in and then have a hissy fit because he didn't want the eggs. Um
Right.
and just didn't really think much of it until all of a sudden something clicked and they all went over and it was a big issue. But
Yeah.
maybe that is one of the big issues in terms of the writing. I mean, it's not developed well enough where there's one singular, opinion of Howard from the characters in the movie, the back, like
Right.
the tertiary characters or even the background characters. I, you would imagine that if someone were walking down the street in Cleveland or Philly or Detroit or any major city and it wasn't Halloween and there was no, convention that you were aware of, you would imagine at the very least you look at this person and go, "What a weirdo!"
Right.
Like not great Halloween costume. Even if it was a kid, be like, "Why are you dressing your kid up like a duck right now?"
Right.
They would get some interesting looks, and there's it's very split where you have the people that are just like, "Oh my God, this is great," and the ones that are like, "This is horrible," and then a whole bunch that are just, you know, don't even realize they're ignorant to the fact that this thing even exists. So I have trouble with that where it's that part's not written incredibly well. Um, and I mean, honestly, I really don't have that many complaints, but I feel like that's a big one when there's not enough consistency.
Yeah, that's definitely like the whole tone of the movie, like you said before, it's kind of it has some dramatic moments, some serious
Hmm.
things happening, and like we've been saying, it's like it's then there's the wacky and the
Yeah,
beyond wacky and just the weird sexual overtones and undertones and just straight up in your face.
yeah,
Like we didn't even talk about how Howard ends up working in a freaking bathhouse somehow or whatever he's working at.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just there's just so much strange things about the movie. But like looking at it today, those are the things like I watch that and like that's the stuff I'm like, oh my, like that's why I love the movie. It's like it's so weird. It draws me in. So
Yeah,
I love anything like that. So
yeah. I mean, in reality, like I said, they're probably trying to appeal to a younger audience, but the reality is that they're going to appeal to a very niche audience. They're
yeah,
going to appeal to a group that, you know, loves the comics and can accept the flaws of this movie just because they get to see a character that they love come to life. And then you're going to get people like us that like to analyze film and can appreciate the nuances and, the character development and things like that. But I feel like there's a huge gap in the two types of people that are going to like this film. And we just happen to be one of them.
yeah. Like from like you said before with the writing aspect of the movie, obviously it's not written well. There's a lot of the
Yeah.
acting is not very good by a lot of the people in the movie,
Yeah.
but somehow if you look deeper than all that, there's something there.
Hmm.
And I just don't think a lot of people understand that or can see that. Like I look at that and I can see parts of American Graffiti. I can see aspects from Star Wars. Like
Hmm.
that's what I see. But obviously, to that most average movie viewers or anybody
Right.
like that, they don't pick up on those things as much. So, but it's just interesting to see
Yeah. I
that.
mean, in general, most people are looking for fun or a good story or a
Right.
combination of both. And honestly, the story is not great here. I
No.
mean, at no point do they develop the story in a way that I went, "Oh my God, aliens are definitely going to come to Cleveland and kill everybody."
Right.
No, I just like you just knew from the
You knew what
beginning,
was going to happen. Yeah.
you knew exactly what was going to happen. And part of the foreshadowing for that is how ridiculous the Dark Overlord is. I mean,
Mhm.
he seems so incompetent in a way that there's no possible way he's going to pull this off. So there's no dramatic there's no drama in that regard. The drama lies in, is Howard going to be okay, and is Howard going to make it home?
Right.
That's where it lies, and that's not the primary story. You come to find out, while that's a big part of it, by halfway through, you realize
There's more
that's
to
what
it.
there's way more to this,
Yeah.
and they almost discount that aspect of it. They discount the overarching story of this alien invasion to develop a character, which is fine again for people like us that want to look at those things, but that's not what the average moviegoer is going to watch.
No.
So,
No.
I mean, they set themselves up to fail in a lot of ways, and then again, you have those two niche groups that will certainly like it. And again, like I said, we're almost 30 years removed or 35 years removed, and we're still talking about it. So it
Yeah.
did something right.
It did. It did. I mean, all those cult movies or anything that's like when it first came out, it's like, oh man, that's terrible. Like I don't know if
Mhm.
you've ever seen uh David Lynch's Dune.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's another movie. It's like most people hate it, and obviously I don't think it's a good movie. But
Hmm.
if somebody said, "Hey, you want to watch David Lynch's Dune with me?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah, let's watch it." You know, I'm still gonna have a good time. It's there's just when it comes down to certain movies and certain directors and certain like a lot of it has to do with the backstories of how movies are made too. So like
Hmm.
this is one of those movies like Howard the Duck is one of those movies. It's like, okay, you knew George Lucas was involved, you knew you know people involved with Star Wars or you knew George Lucas and his crew was involved is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get at, and that was
Yeah.
enough for some people, I guess, but
Sure.
not enough.
Do you think that to some degree when because they make it a point to very early on in the opening credits say executive produced by George Lucas, you think that hinders the film at all?
It probably does because obviously everybody was so used to all of his great stuff. He had banger
Hmm.
after banger after banger
Yeah.
basically, and this was a dud. So yeah, that does. You know, obviously George Lucas didn't direct the movie, but
Yeah.
we're talking about it right now like he did basically, and
Yeah.
that this is all him. But there's other people involved, but it's
Sure.
still it having that right there in the beginning saying George Lucas. I think it definitely does hinder the whole film, and it probably like obviously I wasn't alive when this movie came out,
Yeah.
but it probably hurt him a lot, I'm sure. And, you know, obviously, what after until he made the next Star Wars movies, he wasn't really doing much. So,
No.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, because like I see like when I watch television shows that I like, and every once in a while you see like a familiar name come across directed by, and if you see somebody whether they're connected to the show already or not, you go, well, they're great at their job. This has to be good. Even if
right,
they had a minimal role in it. I mean, director is obviously a lot different than executive producer, but the executive producer has a pretty significant role in making sure that this thing is effective.
right,
So I think people probably, like you said, look at this and go, he just had one great movie, or one right after another. This has to be great. And I
right,
think maybe they set their expectations too high,
definitely,
but it also, for me, it gave me the opportunity to look for certain things just that I expected from Lucas. Even if it wasn't a high quality production, there were little things that I was excited for. And like the score is one thing that I was looking
it's
for.
great,
It's
great.
fantastic. It's so well done. And my initial thought was, did they actually get John Williams to do this? Because that would be ridiculous.
I kept thinking that too the whole entire time I was watching
Yeah.
it.
And it's not John Williams, it's another John. It's John Barry. Um, but I I can't imagine that Lucas didn't have some say in this because it's eerily similar to what you might hear in a Star Wars film.
I thought the
It
same exact thing.
Yes, it's emotional and it's otherworldly, and it just does a great job of supplementing everything along the way, even the worst moments of the film. It does a good job of making them either just a little bit better or pushing them over the edge and saying, screw it, this is going to be incredibly cheesy, deal with it. And I
Yep.
think they really knew what they were going for with the score. So things like that, I was excited when I saw Lucas's name because I had the opportunity to look for things like that where maybe I wouldn't have noticed that if I mean, I may have gone, oh, the score is good and it's effective, but not to this degree would I have understood how good it is. Not ever comparing it to what Williams did in Star Wars. So, you know, it does good and it does bad.
Yeah. I feel like that should be the tagline of the movie. It does good and it does bad because
Yeah.
there's so many things that are terrible about the movie, but there are so many things that are just they're like you just said. I, I, you know, actually beyond that. I'm thinking even beyond that. Like, what do you think are the best parts about the movie
Well,
besides? No, what were you gonna say?
well, I was gonna say the emotional relevance, obviously, but I just watched part of an interview with Willard Hike, who directed the film, right before I hopped on, and he talks about, so there's 10 people credited with bringing Howard the Duck to life. So
Okay,
between the voice, the person in the suit, and then the people in charge of, the puppetry and everything, there's 10 people there. So the fact that they are able to together, 10 people, it seems like too many cooks in the kitchen. It seems like it's impossible to be able to pull it off, because it's not like it's this massive thing that you're bringing to life. It's this small individual, and they do that so well. I
hmm.
mean, obviously it's cheesy, and he kind of looks like he belongs at a Chuck E. Cheese to a degree, but I really enjoyed that about it.
People do not give the movie enough credit. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, he looks so terrible. He looks, it just like you said, it looks like something out of Chuck E. Cheese." But you
Mhm.
know how hard it was probably to pull off most of
Oh
that
yeah,
and how impressive it is. I'm like I said with like the airplane thing, whatever you want to call those things,
hmm
that scene, there's just so much that's impressive about that. Not even from like it's probably just a puppet, or I'm not sure what it is when it's like the shots of it flying, but
yeah,
it's something there, and we connect with the character so much that I'm watching it and I'm going, oh my God, how is Howard doing this? How is Howard flying this?
yeah,
And it's like, okay, it can grab into like my imagination like that I can actually see that it's a humanoid duck that's flying this thing,
yeah.
and not that it's just some puppetry or special effects going on. So
Yeah, they do a good job of allowing us to suspend our disbelief and
definitely.
accept it for what it is. And I mean, that's a big part of these movies in general. You don't go into Star Wars or any Marvel movie going, "Oh, this is real. This better look
Yeah,
like the real thing," because the real thing doesn't exist.
right.
So you need to be able to suspend your disbelief, and they do it enough. And I mean, like you said, in some aspects, they do it really, really well, especially for the times, to allow us to be like, oh my God, this duck is driving right now.
Yeah.
And I believe it. So, and then I got it. I was saving this to the end because this is kind of maybe this is my favorite aspect of the film, and it's the overarching, theme of sex that survives, the entire film.
Oh yeah.
Um, I
From
mean,
the second
so
the movie starts.
yeah, so a couple months ago, it was a Friday. I don't remember, kids were pretty good that week. I'm a teacher, so I was trying to give them like, a Friday off. And I'm trying to think of a movie to watch, and my supervisor goes, "Why don't you have him watch Howard the Duck?" And I went, "There's boobs in it in the first 5 minutes." And they may have looked at it. I mean, I from seventh to 12th grade, they may have looked at this and thought it was so stupid. I'm sure they would have looked at it and said it was so stupid, because it's not even, it's not even human breasts. It's a duck costume with
Yeah.
breasts, and it's
But that
so
might make it
funny.
more disturbing.
That's true. That's true. That's just like, I mean, they're in the bed, and he hints like, maybe you're interested in like playing around or whatever. And for the most part, while she obviously hints at it with her facial expressions, she's like going for it for a little bit.
Oh
She's
yeah.
like really into it, even if it's just an act. So what?
She
Again,
starts to get she tries to get undressed like right in front of him.
she does,
He's the one who's like, no, 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 no. So
right. And so I connected it with, this came out before what I'm about to talk about. But so there's a scene in Friends. I don't know if you have you watched Friends.
I have not.
Okay, because I know there's people that like love it, and there's people who have never watched it. So I'm one of those people that loves it, and I've seen the whole series like 50 times. So there's one scene with Joey and Rachel, um, and he finds porn in her room. So he thinks he's like going to use this to his advantage to get her to sleep with him, because like she's way more into this than he would have ever expected. So she finally is like, yeah, let's do it. And he just shuts it off so quick. That uncomfortability. And that's kind of another thing where they're playing this balancing act where all of a sudden this female character is very much in charge and in a sexual situation. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not something you saw often
definitely
in the
not.
80s.
Yeah,
So while it's silly, they do again balance reality and realism with this in the potential that a duck and a human are about to have sex with one another. But why do you think, again, for a movie that was probably geared towards kids, why do we have so much sex in this movie?
I think it. What I do know about the comics, or I don't know if this was before or after. I know Howard the Duck could have can be a pretty raunchy character, basically.
Hmm.
So that might have something to do with it because they might, the creators of the movie might have said, okay, we need to appeal to the people who know
Okay.
about Howard the Duck. But also, I think they said, you know what, we just need something that is going to make audiences go, what the hell? And I think they thought people were going to talk about, oh, this is the movie, this exudes sexuality, movies these days, like think about like 50 Shades of Grey or like those kind of movies, like people
Yeah.
love seeing those movies, but I don't know, back then I guess they must have thought, okay, maybe there's something there with a duck human relationship, weirdness. I don't know, the 80s were
Yeah.
weird, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. They were trying to go for a
Yeah.
lot back in the day,
Yeah.
and it just didn't work the way they wanted it to with in
Yeah.
that respect.
Well, it was a time when I think sex in general was becoming more relevant in cinema. I can't remember the exact year. Maybe last year I watched a movie, and I don't remember the year the movie came out. It's a movie called Deep Throat, and it's exactly what
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
expect it to be. Have you seen it?
uh I have not seen it, but my one professor talked about it a lot.
It's for all intents and purposes a porn,
Yeah,
but it was like mainstream. It was something that they released with the intention of reaching a much wider audience than someone that would sit down and open porn magazine.
right.
Um, it was just like porn with a story,
Yeah,
effectively. Um, and I think that sort of while there were people that were just pissed off beyond belief that they would release something like this, I think it allowed cinema to explore this a little bit more. Not to
yeah,
that degree, obviously, but I think it opened the door for a lot in that regard.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if, I mean, we're just out of the 70s, which was not just out of the 70s, but we're less than a decade removed from the 70s at this point, which was all that I know about it was it was the hippie era, and it was all about love and stuff like that. So we're not far
Right.
removed from that either. So you're probably, I mean, if you're going to appeal to young adults, even 20, 21 years old, you're talking about kids that grew up in the late 70s that are
Mhm.
very familiar with these ideas.
Right.
And it's probably, even though it's extreme because it's a duck, and you can say he's a humanoid duck all the time, he's still a duck, and that's
Still
really
duck.
weird.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that's semi familiar. So they may have found that it was another way to connect with that that age group at the time.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. But I mean, it's uncomfortable, and I think it would have been one of those movies had I watched it, at a young age with, God forbid, my parents. There would have been some really uncomfortable laughs coming from me, or an uncomfortable noises coming from me while I
Yeah.
watched
Yeah.
with them.
I,
Yeah.
I'm glad I waited until I was, in my mid 20s to watch the movie. That was probably a good time to watch it. So,
Yeah, I saw it probably 8 years ago for the first time, which would have put me, like 24, 25.
yeah.
Um, so that was probably an appropriate time to watch it. But it, so this is complete. It's not completely off topic, but it's off topic for this. But when the first time I ever went to the movies with my stepmom, I was 12 years old, and we saw Wedding Crashers.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Funny you said that because I was same thing. I was at my dad's house and they had Wedding Crashers on, and that was not the movie to have on with a bunch of kids around. Let's just say that.
No. And in the same year, 4-Year-Old Virgin came out. I went to the movies for the first time with my stepdad and saw that. It was a very uncomfortable year for a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
But I imagine that I would have a very similar response in this film, just really
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm just now just I don't even think my mom or my dad have probably even heard of this movie, and I'm glad. Let's just say that I'm glad they don't know. Yeah,
Fortunately, this is not something my parents ever would have watched, so
yeah,
it's not like it was ever in the realm of possibility. But yeah, again, just like you said, glad that this isn't something I watched with them.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but so Howard the Duck again, it's better the second time for sure. And if
Definitely.
you're willing to sit down and talk about it and really analyze it like we did, I think you'll come to find that there are a lot more positives than negatives. And it's really not a bad movie.
No, not at all.
So for anybody watching, um, give it another chance. Honestly,
Definitely.
it's a pretty good movie. It'll make you laugh. You might get choked up every now and again when when Howard deals with some PTSD, which is still weird to see from a duck, but it happens. Um, but so like I said, I wrote a review when I did this. I don't watch movies anymore without writing reviews because I feel like I'm wasting my time because that way at least I can analyze it. And even if I hate it, I can find something to like about it. If I just sit there
Mhm.
and watch like a chick flick and I'm like, this sucks, and I don't write about it, then I'm just gonna be miserable for an hour and a half. So I sat there and I wrote about this, and I think I ended up giving it like an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is I mean, high.
See, when I do the same thing every time I watch a movie, I always review it. I always rate it, and I think I gave it like a 4 or 5 or something. But now
Wow.
watching it the second time, I would definitely rate it higher than that. Probably more
Okay.
like in the 6 or 7 range.
Okay.
But still, that is that's good. That's
Yeah.
not bad. Some movies I watch, I'm like, wow, this is a 1 or a 0.5 basically. Like some are that bad, and Howard the Duck just isn't one of those movies.
No, and I'm hoping you did see the new Guardians, you said?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to spoil it, but with what we find out in the first post credit scene, I would like to see him maybe be a little more relevant in the future.
I thought the same thing. He should be.
Yes, because I mean at some point he's part of the Guardians.
Yeah,
So I would like to see him again be more relevant. Seth Green is a fantastic voice actor, and I'd like to see him have more of an opportunity to play a role in the MCU.
me too.
And I'm holding out hope, and I really don't think it's going to happen. So Kevin Feige has said that his goal with Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty is to incorporate every Marvel character from every movie in the history of Marvel. So I'm holding out hope that this version of Howard the Duck sneaks his way into one of those, even for a split second.
That would be insane. I would love that. They should
Yeah.
totally Kevin Feige, he's already one of my heroes, but he'd be like a god to me after that. So,
Yeah, if he can incorporate that in a way that isn't complete, I mean, it's going to be ridiculous, but
oh
that
yeah,
isn't out of place where it happens naturally, incredible. I'm all for it.
me too. I'm all for that. That sounds
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And so this isn't an interview. This is just like, a discussion about the film. But when I do interviews, I always ask them one final question at the end because I think I like to see the look on their faces. So, what are some of your favorite films?
My favorite films?
Yeah.
Well, my favorite film is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Um, I my second favorite film is probably There Will Be Blood. I love that
Okay.
movie. Daniel Day-Lewis is so good in that. Um, I also love Blade Runner. the original
Okay.
Blade Runner. I like the new Blade Runner 2049 too, but nothing tops the original for me. And this is just my letterbox top four, I think. My other one, Apocalypse Now, I think is my other one. So
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting. So you're not gonna like me for the comments I'm about to make, but I have to make them nonetheless. I have to be honest. So
make them.
2001: A Space Odyssey, I hated when I saw it.
Most people
Um,
do.
but I know I wasn't into film like I am now at the time, so I know I need to go back and watch it again. Um, and I just spoke with someone. So I used to write for Film Threat, um, and I was lucky enough. The owner of Film Threat just did a documentary. And I got to sit down with him and talk about it. And he said one of his favorites, maybe his favorite, was 2001: A Space Odyssey as well. And his reason behind it was he said when he was a kid, it was so obvious to him that movies were fake, and he hated them for it. And he goes, when I saw somebody use the bathroom in 2001: A Space Odyssey, he was like, "Oh my god, these things are real."
Yeah, that
So
like it's those little things about that movie. Like obviously it is a lot that movie, but it's those little things that Kubrick put in there that
mhm,
made it more relatable in a very unrelatable setting. That's what makes that movie
yeah,
connect to me. Same with the classical music in that movie. That helps a lot. So
yeah, yeah. I have to go back and watch it again. I'm gonna make Steph watch it. I don't think she's ever seen it, so it's important that I make her do that.
it's a great it's hard to get through. I mean it's like 2.5 hours long and
Yeah,
not a lot happens, but
yeah.
that's what I love about it. So
One of the things I found so interesting about it was the concept that it's based on like a 12-page short story.
yep,
Like the fact that they turned this short story, like a like really short story, into a 2.5 hour film, and it's highly regarded as one of the best films ever, is,
right.
even if I didn't care for it, that's incredible to be able to
It
do
is.
that.
It is. It's it's quite the feat. I mean, that movie's a lot of the effects in that movie, and they're all practical. A lot of them hold up to this day. Like a lot of
Oh
them
yeah,
still look good. And I'm like, wow. Like obviously some of the stuff, it's like, okay, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake. But I watch it. I'm like again, I watch it, and you got to put all that past yourself and be like, this is before Star Wars. This was the movie that made all those other movies possible, and
yeah,
that's also something I just absolutely love about it.
yeah. You really have to put it in context and express to the people that don't like it, which I get again is me. Um, that it plays such a pivotal role in cinema as a whole. And
Right.
that's, again, if even if you don't like it, you have to understand how important it is. So yeah.
Well, that just reminds me in Howard the Duck in the opening sequence of the movie when it like says Howard the Duck on the screen, it's like
Mm,
it's the monolith from 2001 and
okay.
it transforms into Howard the Duck. So it's
Yeah.
like even in a movie like Howard the Duck that, 2001 is referenced, and that's they're complete opposites, not even close to being the same thing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it even influences movies like Howard the Duck. So
Yeah.
that's why it is one of my favorites.
Well, maybe next time we do this, we'll talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I would love that. That sounds like a great idea, honestly.
Because I have a sneaky suspicion that I'm gonna like it the second time.
Yeah. I have a ton to say about that movie, so I
Awesome.
would love to do that.
Awesome. We will definitely do that. And Brendan, again, thank you so much for sitting down with me for a little while, and talking about Howard the freaking Duck, man.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it. And man, it's so awesome that you invited me to do this.
Of
This
course.
this was fun. So
I'm thrilled. We'll do it again. And you have a great night, man.
yeah, you too.
All right.
Have a good one.
See ya.